So the Indiana Fever's goal for the season was to protect the locker room in the offseason. And I'm not going to go out and say here that Bree Turner isn't doing that. I'm not going to go out and say that Bree Turner is bad in the locker room, because according to everything I've heard, like you see from players, Bree Turner seems to be a good locker room presence. But what Bree Turner has now done, maybe there's protecting the locker room, but then there is, it makes it a lot harder to do when you start World War WNBA within 24 hours of joining the Indiana Fever. Start World War W. The WW? World War WNBA, I don't know. But it was started on Twitter. So basically, let me just give the context here. And by the way, before anyone says anything, I want to be very, very clear. I have absolutely zero issue with any players if they are an activist. I have absolutely no issue. And I mean that because the reality is that anyone can basically push for whatever they feel. I don't care. Because I think you would be a hypocrite saying, obviously, that that Caitlin Clark is obviously that Caitlin Clark doesn't have to say anything if you are saying that these players can't. I've always said this, and I said it at the time. A player can be an activist if they want. They don't have to be if they don't want to. No one should be forced. That's why I hated the whole WNBA as an activist league, because it's almost trying to force it on people. And she was one of the people that tried to force being an activist on Caitlin Clark. And now goes to join Caitlin Clark. And that's where the issue is. And by the way, there are really shitty people in every single fan base. There are really shitty people in every group. And yes, there were people saying things completely out of pocket to her. But the vast majority of things that were said about her was complaining about her, effectively blaming Caitlin Clark for not solving racism. That was one of her tweets. Basically saying Caitlin Clark did not do enough and that Caitlin Clark can stop all Twitter trolls. Obviously nonsense. And by the way, it's harder to protect the locker room when World War WNBA is happening, because if World War WNBA is happening on social media, they then start asking the players questions, and yes, Caitlin Clark can brush it off. But we saw, by the way, Caitlin Clark had her worst game as a pro. And by the way, people are like, oh, this game she was worse, X and Y game she was worse. Some games, like the other team, has had good defenders. She scored 7 points against the Atlanta Dream and looked shook after Dejanay Carrington went and called her out on social media. So yeah, there are certain things that are going to affect her. And her essentially being the face of the racist, which is not true, and it never has been true. And all Bree Turner has done is basically said it's true. And that's basically her tweet is. So Bree Turner, this is her pin tweet. Reminding myself I don't have to constantly engage in social media discourse. Great! Then why the hell did you need to do it yesterday? You joined a team and you basically called all their fans racist. And that is the dumbest thing you can do. Because yes, there are a small, and I mean this, there are a small in every single fan base. And this is what people don't understand. The more fans there are in anything, the more fans there are in anything, the more bad fans and good fans there are. Let's just say 1% of every fans are bad. Of every fan is bad. And the percentage is actually way lower than 1%. But let's just say, for argument's sake, to make the numbers easy, 1% of fans are bad. So how many bad fans would it take before somebody on Twitter with a third of the followers I have to notice? And I mean this. If there were 10 people constantly, and I'm somebody with freaking 5 times the amount of Twitter followers as Bree Turner. If there were 10 fans, only 10, that were horrible people, I would notice by just if I was looking on social media. And it just needs to be 10. It just needs to be 10, maybe 20, 30, before, and I don't start recognizing names. If there's 30, there's probably enough that you don't recognize names. And let's just say it's 1% and 30. That's literally like saying there are 3,000 Fever fans, which is not true. let's just say on Twitter there's 100,000 Fever fans. And I was looking through all the response to Breanna Turner. The people that actually said stuff so out of line, I would say under 100. Under 100. And tweets about Breanna Turner, there were tens of thousands of tweets about Breanna Turner signing for the Fever. Out of the posts criticizing it, a lot of people were like, okay, not a fan of Twitter fingers. There are 100 times more posts about Twitter fingers, about her inability to get off social media, than there are about any activism that she has done. But yet, she will, again, paint a million people under one brush because of the actions of under 100. And I'm not joking with those numbers. And that's the thing. Because now you look, everything in the WNBA is tweeting at because you know the fact that there are people in the WNBA media that let the Twitter narrative run everything. They let Twitter narrative run everything. These people are not basketball fans. They are drama fans. And again, I get it. This channel gets a bit like that sometimes. And I can't wait until the season starts so I can just talk about basketball. But unfortunately, I'll talk about anything. And that's just the way it goes. I talk about the news stories. I talk about what is relevant at the time. And unfortunately, right now, there's no basketball going on. Hopefully, I can talk more about Unrivaled. I can talk more about the Sun basically saying they're not going to trade Marina Mabry, or they're at least considering it. I'll talk about that stuff. And it's just unfortunately not as much basketball going on. Heck, the next video I upload is going to be about Lucy Olsen. So if you want to see more basketball stuff, it'll be in the next video. But Bree Turner has now put herself in a place where she essentially has already got the fan base against her. And by the way, and then anyone who is now against her is branded a racist by other fans, because she has essentially said all Fever fans are racist. And I mean that. That is essentially what she said in that tweet. Because anything that wouldn't have been screw you fans would have ended here. Friendly reminder, I'm against all forms of discrimination. I often advocate against these. Cool. Anyone who has an issue with this tweet right here is a shit person. And then it just goes, I won't change advocacy to appeal others. While I'm anticipating receiving hostility and invalidation. I'm like, yeah, by what? 20 people? If I'm not for you, at about 150 other players at W that you can support instead. Like, you're just antagonizing a fan base. And by the way, and I mean this, you are basically doing what everyone thought was in fear of. You know the narrative. The worst narrative that has been spread was about Caitlin Clark effectively being the queen of the racists, which was never the truth. Caitlin Clark has come out and said that a million times. She has defended Angel Reese. She freaking defended Dejanay with this situation publicly. She has defended every single narrative. She has called out everything. And then Breanna Turner still felt the need to basically blame her for everything negative in the WNBA last season and say that she didn't do enough to stop it. And then goes and joins her team. And then people, obviously, what happens? People show old tweets. Just like Sydney Colson, by the way, people have not forgot her saying that Monica Zinano looked like a man. People have not forgot that. And people will never forget that. People don't forget old tweets. Like, people genuinely don't forget old tweets. And that happens. And by the way, like, I have definitely said dumb shit. I definitely have. Like, I definitely have. But the thing is where it's like, even if your old tweets are wrong, you either ignore them, or if it's something you've said wrong, apologize. Like, that's the way it is in life. But doubling and tripling down, and basically saying no, and basically the amount of, taking a small amount of people, and by the way, like, it seems like has an issue with the whole people calling her out for her basically blaming Caitlin Clark on not solving the WNBA things. And by the way, she's still at fault for that. Anyone who was pushing that narrative is at fault. And now, like, all she's done is post a tweet, and people are like, oh, people are misunderstanding it. No. People are understanding it exactly how she wants it to be understood. You're all awful. I'm just going to go, and if you don't like me, you don't have to like me. You're all awful. I'm not going to be on this that much. But yet, her pin tweet is about her not engaging in social media, and she couldn't even go 23 hours on the Fever without engaging in social media. And the worst part about this is that the Indiana Fever are a team who at times in the season, when they were doing badly, did let social media dictate some outcomes. You can tell, obviously, so there was some, like, Aaliyah Boston was not used to the scrutiny. Some stuff was said was way out of line, but the vast majority of it was just criticism of her game. And she had to take a step back from social media, and she stepped up. And really stepped up. And the same with Caitlin Clark. Like, we saw how shook she was against the Dream after the Dejanay stuff happened. When Dejanay basically called her out for, again, not solving racism. So, it is, like, Caitlin spent all last season in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, and Bree Turner was one of the players leading the damned if you do, damned if you don't. And her stepping away from that entirely and ignoring it is a big reason why she's had so much success. And I do want to stand by this. I don't think Bree Turner is a locker room cancer. I don't think she's going to be. I think she's a good basketball player. I think for every single basketball reason, you want Bree Turner on your team. You want Bree Turner on your team because of just the player that she is. But the whole thing is about protecting the locker room. And again, let's not say that she is going to be bad for the locker room. All we can say is, everybody knows it. It is a lot easier to protect the locker room when things are going well. When you're not being constantly asked these questions. Because you better believe, let's just say that coming into this season, and Bree Turner keeps up with her Twitter fingers, calling it, if she keeps, and by the way, at the end of last season, she essentially said, don't ignore the trolls, keep replying to the trolls. Whereas the Fever's entire narrative was ignore the trolls last year. She came out as well to criticize the Fever. Like, she went and criticized basically everything for ignoring the trolls. She went out and basically said, we can't do this. So I'm sorry, if a player has said, I am going to publicly call out trolls, then suddenly, that happens on social media. You've got the WNBA media who are there for drama as much as anything. And again, you can partially include myself in that. Like, especially in the off season when nothing is happening. Thankfully, during the year, hopefully more basketball is being talked. But you've got that happening now. And now you've got reporters that can't wait, that are rubbing their hands together because they couldn't wait to hear some of the stuff Dejanay would say, or Christine Brennan trying to get answers. And by the way, Christine Brennan, with Caitlin Clark liked an Instagram post, basically try to make her give her political opinion in an interview. Like, Caitlin Clark couldn't do anything with that. But if Bree Turner's there, you with the old Twitter fingers, and again, this is an if. She's there with Twitter fingers, responding to trolls, suddenly you better believe in the next game's press conference, the entire narrative is going to be taken over by trolls. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am absolutely wrong with this. And maybe I'm completely wrong. But she is somebody who has publicly said we shouldn't ignore the trolls. And within 23 hours of signing, proved she couldn't, while having basically a pinned tweet saying she's not engaging in anything, engages with the trolls. I'm not even engaging with the trolls, just engages. But yeah, basically engages with the trolls. Within 23 hours of signing. So, why should we believe that her Twitter fingers are going to stop? And by the way, this is not me saying Breanna Turner needs to stop any sort of activism work. That's not to say Breanna Turner doesn't need to post about things she cares about. Because if she's doing something, if she cares about something, post about it. But make sure that is not something that could potentially affect the narrative around your entire team. Because, yes, it might not directly affect the locker room today, but over the course of the season, if she continues to cause World War WNBA on social media, considering the fact that the WNBA media, and I'm not even talking about social media, the legacy media who are asking the questions are probably more terminally online than they're as terminally online as the players. If you start World War WNBA, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to protect that locker room. But anyway, I'll see you guys.